We'll call the committee adjustment meeting to order. First order of business, we're just going to go around and check everyone's mics and videos. I can see all the committee members. I think I've heard them all. If you can just give me a hands up or a thumbs up that you're all good. Eric, your video disappeared, but I'm assuming that's just a temporary thing. Eric, you still there? Your mic's on mute if you're trying to talk.
Sorry, I'm having troubles hearing the meeting right now, so I'm trying to figure out what's happening with my phone.
Okay. I'll give you a minute or two. Just let me know when you're good. Maybe while we're waiting on, there you go, back.
I think I figured it out.
All right, sounds good. So with that being said, before we get started this evening, I'm just going to go through the committee meeting protocol. This evening there are 4 applications that we'll be hearing. And what we'll do is the first order of business will be to ask any committee members if they have any conflicts of interest with any of the applications on the agenda this evening. Following that, we'll be requesting any deferrals and withdrawals of applications from the applicants. And then once we start, the committee secretary will read out each application on the agenda, followed by a brief description and a staff recommendation. Applicant or the agent of the applicant will be asked to introduce themselves. We'll bring them into the meeting at that time. We'll just confirm that they don't wish to withdraw their application. And then following that, members of the committee will then have an opportunity to ask the applicants any questions that they might have. Following that, members of the public, and I believe we have one registered, person registered to speak delegation this evening. So we'll bring that person at that time. And they can ask any questions that they have. We do ask that they try to limit their comments to 10 minutes and ask all questions or any concerns they have at that time. Following that, the committee members will then have an opportunity to ask any further questions that they have, and the applicant will be able to present any following or follow-up comments that they wish to at the end. Once all the comments have been presented, we will then go to the committee members and look for a decision in the form of a motion. The motion will be discussed and voted upon. The vote is tied, a motion will be defeated, and a new motion will be made. We'll continue that process until we have a decision. It should also be noted that notice of the decision will only be provided for those persons who give their name and addresses their secretary treasurer in the planning department division. They can contact David Schultz at Colborne.ca or call
like it's not loud enough?
905-825-2901 extension 202 immediately following the meeting. And I believe that privilege will be open until tomorrow morning. In order to be advised of any possible local planning field tribunal hearings, you must request to be sent a copy of the committee's decision. That's the process for this evening. I will ask for conflicts of interest first, and I believe Donna expressed a conflict earlier.
Yes, I do. Dan, to number 4, please.
Okay, and just for the record, that's application A0321 PC for the vacant lot on Isabel Street.
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Anyone else have any conflicts? With that being said, I don't think we've received any written requests for deferrals of applications or withdrawals. So with that, I'll go to the Secretary Treasurer for the first application, please.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Our first application tonight is number B01-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, Section 53.1. And in the matter of the lands legally known as part of Lot 11 and 12 on Concession 3 in the former municipality of Humberstone, now the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 3288 Second Concession Road. And in the matter of an application by the agent Julian Renault on behalf of the owners Andy and Dorothy Veenstra for a severance under Section 53.1 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, so as to permit the conveyance of Part 1 having a lot frontage of 91.06 meters with a total lot area of 1.58 hectares on Second Concession Road for an existing residential use. Part 2 will retain a lot frontage of 815.88 meters on Second Concession Road with a total lot area of 60.41 hectares for an existing agricultural use. Notice was circulated on January 25th, 2021 to the public and to the required agencies, and the following has been received. From the Engineering and Operations Department, the majority of the parcel is in the watershed of the Beaver Dam Drain, with a small piece of the northeast corner being in the watershed of the Fred Pitts Drain, and should the application be approved, the applicant will require a drainage apportionment agreement. This can be completed either by the drainage superintendent or by an approved engineer. Additionally, should either parcel created rely on the remnant parcel for drainage, it is recommended that a mutual drainage agreement or a mutual agreement grain be utilized to ensure effective drainage into the future. From the NPCA, at this time, the NPCA staff has no objections to application for minor variance B01-21-PC. And from the Niagara region, regional staff would not object to the consent application provided that, 1, that the lot lines for Part 1 be revised to remove all agricultural lands currently in production and minimize the size of the parcel to be more in line with regional policy to the satisfaction of the Niagara region, and 2, that Part 2 be rezoned for agricultural purposes only to preclude construction of a dwelling in perpetuity. These conditions are required in order for the proposal to be consistent with the PPS and conform to provincial plans in the ROP. The proposal as submitted exceeds the maximum size permitted by the ROP and would result in the removal of lands currently in agricultural production, which is not consistent with the PPS and does not conform to the ROP. Planning staff recommends that consent application B01-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, approval of a zoning bylaw amendment for Part 1 to agricultural residential zone and for Part 2 to an agricultural purposes only zone. 2, that the lines for Part 1 be revised to remove all agricultural lands currently in production and minimize the size of the parcel to be more in line with regional policy to the satisfaction of the Niagara region. 3, that a drainage apportionment agreement be completed with the drainage superintendent or through an approved engineer at the cost of the applicant. 4, that the applicant provides the secretary-treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or a registrable legal description of the subject parcel together with a paper copy and electronic copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. 5, that a final certification fee of $212 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary-Treasurer for the following reasons. Number 1, the application conforms to the policies of the official plan and will comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575-30-18 as amended. Of subsection for this application.
Thank you. Can we bring in the applicant at this time, or the agent for the applicant?
Okay, they call on you.
All right.
You mean?
Can you hear us? Yes, we can.
There I am. I was looking down here for some reason.
Sorry.
Julie Renault and Brian Lambie, agents for the applicants.
Welcome. Is there anything further you'd like to? Well, before I start, you don't wish to withdraw your application this evening?
No, we do not.
Okay. So with that, is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
I agrees with all conditions. We've spoken with our client with respect to all the conditions proposed by the planning department, and our client agrees with all of the conditions. It's a relatively straightforward severance of a surplus farm dwelling, and in the circumstances, we submit that it should be granted.
All right, thank you. Do any members wish to ask any questions? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wondering to the agent, did you receive the last minute comments by the region? I know we just received them today.
Yes. Yes, the ones that have five conditions.
That's correct. Very good then. Just want to make sure that you had that.
Yes, we do.
All right. Any other members have any questions? And just one more confirmation that we have no public members that wish to speak to this application this evening.
That's correct, yes.
All right. So with that being said, I'm assuming you don't have any final comments. That there was no other comments to be made. So with that, does anyone have a recommendation? Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With respect to application B01-21PC, and in the matter of the lands legally known as part of Lot 11 and 12 on Concession 3, known as 3288 Second Concession Road, the consent application B01-21-PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation of the planning staff memo dated February 9th, 2021. For the following reasons. One, the application conforms to the policies of the official plan and will comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575-30-18 as amended. And two, this decision is rendered having regard to the provisions of subsection 51(24) of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13.
Thank you. Can I get a seconder to that? Angie? Any questions or comments? Not seeing any. All those in favor? Opposed? That'll be carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Secretary Treasurer, the next application at your leisure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Our next application is number B02-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13, Section 53(1), and in the matter of the lands legally known as Lot 32 on Plan 33 in the former municipality of Humberstone, now the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 144 Franklin Avenue. And in the matter of an application by owners Dennis and Pam Roy for a severance under Section 53(1) of the Planning Act RSO 1990, Chapter P13, so as to permit the conveyance of Part 1 having a lot frontage of 18.28 meters with a total lot area of 404.1 meters squared on Knoll Street for a proposed residential use. Part 2 will retain a lot frontage of 14.47 meters on Franklin Avenue with a total lot area of 264.7 meters squared for an existing residential use. Notice was circulated on January 25th to the public and the required agencies, and the following has been received. From the engineering department, Part 2 will not conform to the driveway as per entrance bylaw 1117-64-81. The location of the driveway on Part 2 would also require a 1.5 meter offset from lateral property line. Given the information, planning staff recommend that application B02-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that entrance bylaw 1117-64-81 be amended or relief be granted to the applicant by City Council to permit a driveway on Part 2 as existing on the severance sketch that will satisfy parking requirements as outlined in the City zoning bylaw. 2, that the applicant obtain relief from bylaw 1117-64-81 granted by City Council to permit the existing driveway of Part 2 to remain as proposed on a severance sketch. 3, that a minor variance application be approved for Part 1 granting relief from zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended for a minimum lot area. 4, that a minor variance application be approved for Part 2 granting relief from zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended for minimum lot area and minimum lot frontage. 5, that the applicant provides the Secretary Treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel or a registerable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a paper copy and electronic copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. 6, that a final certification fee of $212 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. 7, pursuant to Section 5012 of the Planning Act RSO 1990, it is hereby stipulated that Section 50-3 or 50-5 shall apply to any subsequent conveyance of or other transaction involving the identical subject parcel of land, for the following reasons. 1, the application conforms to the provincial policy statement, the policies of the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, and will also comply with the provisions of the zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. Could we bring the applicant or the agent for the applicant in to the meeting? Good evening, sir. Your mic is still on mute.
How's that?
Perfect.
Good.
Just before we start, you don't wish to withdraw or defer your application this evening?
No.
Very good. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
That's what I can think of.
All right, thank you. Is there any members of the committee that wish to ask any questions? Gary?
Mr. Mayor, are you referring to staff or just Mr. Roy at this time?
Well, I'd like to be the mayor, but I'm not the mayor, but it's to the committee members, yes. If any committee members have any questions.
Yeah, it can be of staff or just Mr. Roy. Sorry, that was my question.
Oh, yes, you can ask either.
Fine. Through you to David. Dave, I'm just wondering about, I think you have a well-reasoned, and I'm surprised we haven't come across this in the past, at least I can't remember it, with the 1981 entrance bylaw that I think you've enunciated again very well, that it needs review and updating. So to that end, the applicant's being asked to obtain relief from the bylaw granted by City Council. That also is going to on Isabel, I believe, too. So the question is, does the applicant have to make that application to the clerk, given that and is there a fee, given that our bylaw is that out of date?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Bruno. The reason we worded that condition that way is to give the opportunity to engineering staff to make that amendment on their own when time permits. However, due to the time frame that's set on a consent application, we felt that it was necessary to keep the option open for the applicant to request relief from council.
So yeah, I mean, his application stands in, he may not be able to fulfill those conditions unless he acts. He'll have no idea when we will. So does he have to approach planning? Is there a fee for that?
To my knowledge, it would simply be a delegation before council to request a relief from that bylaw.
Fine, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have any other questions? Donna?
One more for David. Just, is there any idea when that bylaw may come up or may be changed? Do we have any time frames? How long it will be?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Member Kalaliff. We have had discussions with engineering staff about this bylaw, and they are aware and agree with planning staff that it is outdated, to say the least. I don't have a time frame for when they can get around to making those changes. They are very busy. Unfortunately, I don't have that time frame right now. But hopefully within a year it would be done, but you never know, so that's why we left that condition the way it is with the option for the applicant.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Just before we go to public comments, which I don't believe there are any, if maybe David or Chris, sorry, you can confirm
Yeah, that's correct.
that there's no, thank you. I guess I have more of a comment than really a question. I have to say, when this application first came up, it seemed a little bizarre to me at first to cut a lot in half. I realized the existing dwelling is kind of situated in the back corner of the property. And when I say back corner, by definition, the frontage would be at the far end of the lot, not on Franklin, but on, sorry, I don't know what the street is to the west there, but it just seemed really bizarre that, you know, we could do this and be considering it minor. I did also do some quick calculations. I looked at the zoning bylaw for setbacks and everything else. With respect to the existing dwelling, I know one of the conditions is to come before the committee for some minor variances to make that dwelling and that lot in compliance. One is the total lot area, which was I guess the prime one. There's a few others in there, as well as, although not mentioned in the report, once that back portion of the lot gets severed with where the dwelling is existing, there'll also be an additional setback for what will now then become the front yard setback to the front of that property. With that being said, I was still kind of surprised at how much building footprint there is to even complying with the exterior side yard setback. And I guess maybe my question is maybe not so much to the applicant, a little bit more to staff. I guess the only stumbling block that could be perceived on this particular application was whether it be minor in nature. Basically, looking at the size of the adjacent properties and the lots, it would appear that we're taking a normal size lot that or maybe not a normal anymore, but a regular size or commonly sized lot in the city, and in essence cutting them in half. Obviously, this one has the advantage of being sided on two sides with road access. I'm just wondering, is there any consideration down the road about reducing lot sizes to comply with this? I'm not necessarily in objection to this application. I noticed in looking at the report and the aerial view, and as well as taking a drive by there, some of their other dwellings on adjacent property owners you could probably cut and paste that into the existing dwelling and fit within that building permit or parameters. By my calculation, you could probably fit almost a 1,200 square foot single floor dwelling on those remnant lots and still comply with the setback requirements. So, but for the lot coverage being the only exception. So I'm just wondering, is there with the new requirements for intensification, it is really just for my own benefit, is there a plan to, go to smaller size lots? I guess at some point in time, you gotta kind of set some limits, but this just seemed a little extreme to me, but like I say, I'm not necessarily an objection to it. I don't know if Chris or David
I can jump in there, Dan. So with the city's official plan, we have taken on the policies of the province and the growth plan to encourage intensification in the urban area where there's city services in place already. Knowing this area, I've known that area for quite a while now. I understand that the existing house there is already too close to the property line. If it will be the front yard eventually, if it is approved by the committee and severed. I don't see how that house has had an impact on the remnant parcel that will be. There is a large area there that seemingly has been unused for a number of years. So from planning side of it, we see it as a good intensification opportunity, albeit the lots are smaller. But we think it's a good fit for the area.
All right, thank you. So with that being said, unless anyone else has any other questions or comments, does anyone have a recommendation? Donna?
Give me 1 second. Okay. Application B02-21-PC, and in the matter of the lands legally known as Lot 32 and Plan 33, municipally known as 144 Flanken Avenue, that consent application B02-21PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation in the planning staff report dated February the 3rd, 2021. For the following reasons: that the application conforms to provincial policy statement, the policies of the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, and will also comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575-30-18 as amended.
Thank you. And a seconder to that? Gary? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. So there is to the applicant, there is a 20-day waiting period. And as well as you'll need to make application for the variances for those other things, which is a condition upon this. My suggestion would be to work on those relatively quickly. You do have a year to comply with all of the requirements or the conditions that are imposed on this. Obviously, if you want to wait for the 20-day waiting period first to make application, but I would suggest you get on those relatively quickly just to be on the safe side, just in case there's a snag somewhere. And good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So with that being said, the next application, Mr. Secretary Treasurer.
Our next application is number B03-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, Section 53(1), and in the matter of the lands legally known as Lots 3, 4, and 5 on Reference Plan 987, 988, and 989 in the former municipality of Humberstone, now the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, municipally known as 38 Clarence Street. And in the matter of an application by the owner, 1729687 Ontario Limited, for a severance under Section 53(1) of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, Chapter P13, so as to permit the conveyance of Part 1 having a lot frontage of 23.10 meters on Clarence Street for a total lot area of 796.1 meters squared for an existing commercial use. Part 2 will retain a lot frontage of 25.21 meters on Clarence Street with a total lot area of 1,178.6 meters squared for an existing commercial use. Notice was circulated to the public and the required agencies on January 25th, 2021, and no correspondence has been received. Given the information in the planning staff report, staff recommend that application B03-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that the applicant provides the Secretary Treasurer with the deeds in triplicate for conveyance of the subject parcel for a registerable legal description of the subject parcel, together with a paper copy and electronic copy of the deposited reference plan, if applicable, for use in the issuance of the certificate of consent. 2, that a final consent fee of $212 payable to the City of Port Colborne be submitted to the Secretary Treasurer. And 3, pursuant to Section 5012 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, it is hereby stipulated that Section 53 or 55 shall apply to the subsequent conveyance of or other transaction involving the identical subject parcel of land. For the following reasons. 1, the application conforms to the provincial policy statement, the policies of the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, and will also comply to the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575-30-18 as amended. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. Can you bring in the applicant or the agent for the applicant, please? Good evening. Can you hear us all right?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Just before we get started, you don't wish to withdraw or defer your application this evening?
No, sir.
Thank you. Is there anything further you'd like to add at this time?
No.
Very good. Do any members have any questions of the applicant this evening? Not seeing any. And just to confirm again, we don't have any public requests for speak to on this application this evening?
That is correct.
Very good. So with that being said, does anyone have a recommendation? Eric?
In application B03-21-PC, and in the matter of as lots 3, 4, and 5 on reference plan 987, 988, and 989, municipally known as 38 Clarence Street, that consent application B03-21-PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation in the planning staff report dated February 3, 2021. For the following reasons. 1, the application conforms to provincial policy statement, the policies of the regional official plan, City of Port Colborne official plan, and will also comply with the provisions of zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended.
Thank you. A seconder to that? Gary? Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That'll be carried. Thank you. That was quick and easy. Have a good evening. And Mr. Secretary Treasurer, just before we go to the last application, Donna's probably going to step into the lobby or log out and log in.
I will put her in the waiting room.
All right. To recognize the conflict, and whenever you're ready with the last application, please.
The last application tonight is number A03-21-PC. In the matter of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 as amended in section 6.5A, 6.5B, and 6.5K of the City of Port Colborne zoning bylaw 6575/30/18 as amended. And in the matter of the vacant property legally known as lots 256 and 257 on Plan 852 in the City of Port Colborne, Regional Municipality of Niagara, being Part 2 on Plan 59R 16711 and located in the second density residential zone. And in the matter of an application by the agent Paul Demchek on behalf of the owner 2712 Ontario Inc. for relief from the provision amended under Section 45 of the Planning Act RSO 1990 CP 13 was to permit two-story semi-detached dwelling on the east side of Isabel Street, notwithstanding the following. Provided whereas a lot frontage of 18 meters is required for semi-detached dwellings. 2, that a minimum lot area of 329.1 meters squared be provided, whereas a minimum lot area of 500 meters squared is required for semi-detached dwellings. 3, that a minimum lot area of 181.8 meters squared be provided, whereas a minimum lot area of 200 meters squared is required. 4, that a minimum lot area of 165.42 meters squared be provided, whereas a minimum lot area of 200 meters is required. Notice was circulated to the public and to the required agencies on January 25th, 2021, and we have received the following. From a Josh Clayliff, I believe, on 19 Isabel Street. I'm the property owner at 19 Isabel Street, directly to the north of the proposed variance. Our concern regarding this variance is that a two-story building will appear crowded on the smaller sized lots. We oppose this variance for this reason. And from the Engineering and Operations Department, Part 1 will not conform to the driveway as per entrance bylaw 1117/64/81. According to the entrance bylaw, a minimum driveway width is 5 meters and must be offset 1.5 meters from the lateral property line. A semi-detached development on this lot cannot meet those requirements. The location of the driveway on Part 2 would also require 1.5 meter offset from the lateral property line. Given this information, planning staff recommend application A03-21-PC be granted subject to the following conditions. 1, that entrance bylaw 1117/64/81 be amended or relief be granted to the applicant by City Council to permit a driveway on the property that will satisfy parking requirements as outlined in the city's zoning bylaw. For the following reasons. 1, it is minor in nature as the reduction in lot frontage and lot area for the semi-detached dwelling is a reasonable and measured request. 2, it is appropriate for development of the site since the proposed dwelling will be located in a suitable location on the site and is desirable to the overall housing market. 3, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the zoning bylaw as semi-detached dwellings are permitted in the R2 zone. And 4, it is desirable and in compliance with the general intent of the purpose of the official plan as residential purposes are permitted in areas with the urban residential designation. And that concludes the correspondence for this application.
Thank you. And can we bring in the applicant or the agent for the applicant? Good evening, sir. You can hear us all right?
Yes, good evening, members of the committee.
Thank you. Just before we get started, you don't wish to withdraw or defer your application this evening?
No, we do not.
Very good. If you have any other comments that you'd like to add at this time, please feel free.
Thank you. I would like to do a very brief overview of the history of the property, as well as just in terms of what we are proposing this evening. So as mentioned, the property is a vacant lot located on Isabel Street, I guess legally known as Part 2 on Plan 59R 16711. In terms of the quick application history, and as a preamble and for the benefit of the committee, there was a previous land division that was approved that included this property in November of 2019, which included 239 Sugarloaf being the corner property at Sugarloaf and Isabel, which was approved by the Committee of Adjustment at that time. This is essentially allowed for the creation of 2 new residential lots, one of them being the lot fronting on Isabel, which is obviously before the committee this evening. The proposed application includes to build a new semi-detached dwelling fronting on Isabel Street. Obviously, with our application, we've provided a survey, we've provided plans as well as building elevations for what that dwelling will look like. Obviously, the proposed semi-detached dwelling requires minor variances, which are discussed within this presentation. In terms of the character, obviously the plans have been circulated to the committee. It is my suggestion that the proposed semi-detached dwelling has been designed with a roof with one roof line and to generally appear as one building from a character perspective. I will also note that the proposed development also meets all of the built form requirements of the bylaw, including all setbacks, height, and lot coverage requirements. And what we are seeking today are reductions in the required lot area of the zoning bylaw and the proposed lot frontage. It is noted that obviously the site is located within the urban residential designation within the city of Port Colborne official plan. And it was noted that the property is also zoned a second density residential zone or R2 zoning category, which permits detached dwellings and duplex dwellings and semi-detached dwellings, which is what is permitted or what is proposed this evening. I will note in terms of the building, there was a comment obviously from a neighboring property owner regarding the character and in terms of the massing of the building. I would note that a single detached dwelling that is identical to what is proposed in terms of building siting, setbacks, height, coverage could be built in its current form today without any variances to the bylaw. And what we are essentially proposing is obviously once the building is created, a consent application down the middle of that dwelling. Furthermore, in addition to just a single detached dwelling, we could, in theory, a client could build and one single detached dwelling with an accessory apartment that looks identical to what you are also seeing this evening. So from my perspective and from a character perspective, this complies with what is the intent of the zoning bylaw and from the official plan perspective. I've also submitted a planning justification report on behalf of the applicant in support of the application. And just as a quick summary, I will suggest that the proposed variances are in keeping with the purpose and intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw, are considered minor in nature and appropriate and desirable for the area. On this basis, I have submitted my professional opinion that the proposed development satisfies the 4 tests required for a minor variance under the Planning Act and do represent good planning. I'm before the committee if there are any questions or comments. Thank you.
Wishes to speak to this. You mentioned that you had submitted a plan.
That wasn't part of our package. You do happen to have it electronically. You can share on the screen with us, like maybe a rendering of the front elevation and side elevation.
Can everyone see this?
Not yet.
I'll try again here.
Oh, it's starting to come up there now. Here we go.
Can everyone see that?
Yes.
So I don't have all the plans in front of me this evening, but for the committee's benefit and for the benefit of the public, this is a front elevation. So what you see here is ostensibly one roof line. The only difference I would suggest from a character perspective is that instead of one front door, you have 2 front doors. But otherwise, every aspect of this building could be developed in terms of, again, its setbacks, its massing, height, etc., from a built form perspective.
Excellent. All right, very good, thank you. So with that being said, if there's no other committee member questions or comments, I know we did have a request from a delegation. If we can maybe bring that person to the meeting now. I don't know if Mr. Easthope, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly, if you can hear us or if you have video. There we go.
Yep.
Very good, sir. Ask away.
No, sorry, I have no questions at this time. I was actually, my opinion was just that, again, it would, very similar to the other neighbor, that this would create crowding on the street and a very, very tight property line.
All right, thank you. Just on that point to the applicant, in the proposed layout of this dwelling, would there be a driveway on property for each unit?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that's correct. There would be one driveway per unit. With obviously coming up to the front door, it is proposed at this time that each driveway would be approximately 3 meters wide.
Okay. So there would be no requirement for on-street parking other than if they had more than one vehicle or visitors?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So with that being said, does anyone else have any other questions or comments, committee members? Not seeing any. Does the applicant have any final comments or questions that they have?
No other comments. I have read the staff report as well as the conditions, specifically related to the requirements of bylaw from the driveway bylaw from 1981, and reviewed that with my client. We have no other additional comments or concerns at this time.
All right, thank you. Does anyone have a recommendation? Angie, there you go. Thank you.
There we go. I think I just unmuted myself. I have, yes. Okay, application A0321PC, lots 256 and 257 on plan 852 on the east side of Isabel Street. That minor variance application A0321PC be granted, subject to the conditions outlined in the recommendation in the planning staff report dated February 3rd, 2021, for the following reasons. 1, minor in nature. 2, appropriate for the development of the site. 3, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purposes of the zoning bylaw. And 4, desirable and in compliance with the general intent and purpose of the official plan.
Thank you. A seconder to that? Gary, any questions or comments? All those in favor? That be carried. So with that, is Donna still there? You can let her back in. There we go. The next item or agenda item is other business. Does anyone have any other business? Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. David, I'm going to try and rejig the chairman's question back when we talked about Franklin and Knoll Street, because, correct me if I'm wrong, Dan, but this is, my concern is with intensification that the baseline for lot size is too large, because if there's going to be intensification, then I'm concerned that that when you start getting 500 square meters and you're down to 300 and something, I mean, you're talking a third less property, and for it still to be minor in nature. I mean, don't you think, and Dan, I don't know if this is where you're going, but it just seems to me that if you're going to do intensification, then we should already start with a smaller lot size being required. Because at some point, I don't know when it becomes minor. I mean, it's the problem is you're dealing with percentage, and to the layman or even us after being on here for a while, when you start dropping a third of the lot size and it's still considered minor, where's the line?
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's a little bit where I was going. And I guess what I was just trying to get is some perspective if there's consideration based on provincial policy statements and regional policy statements and the city plan, whether there's a foot to actually go and start shrinking some of these requirements.
Yes.
I guess just like you've mentioned, yes, the committee has the ability to determine what minor is. As we all know, minor could be right down to 0. In the case of lot area, obviously you can't, but for any of the other variances, 0, can go from a 7-meter setback to 0, and that still be considered minor. However, it is a challenge, and it's up to every individual to decide what their definition of minor is. I guess where I'd like to go, and although it doesn't set precedent as what we do today, is there a plan or a strategy going forward, provincial-wide, city-wide, regional-wide, to start reducing these lot sizes, so that way what might be deemed to be significantly minor today will become, I won't say more of the norm, but less of the norm.
Through you, if I could just jump in, I think that's definitely something we would be looking to change in our zoning bylaw in the near future. Just overall, just as a design standpoint for new subdivisions and lots in general, I think with today's standards, our lot size, at least in that specific zone, is a little high. With that being said, I think there is a discretionary opportunity for each different application. Every application is different. With this one, I think this was a good use of space. It's an underutilized property as it is, and I think that's why we recommended it.
Yeah, I don't think this particular case would happen too often and too many lots within the city boundary, I wouldn't think. I think, Eric, you had a question or comment?
Yes, I was just wondering, because both you and Gary were bringing up, whether it was minor in nature, but was that application was not a consent, was it not? So why is it we're asking whether or not it's minor?
Well, it is, but the ramifications are then the variances that go with that severance. Typically, when you see something like this where there's a severance and the remnant lot or the new lot or both have to have some variances to go along with it.
Right.
Usually they're all tied together as a package. Obviously, in this case, it's not, and you're right. For a severance, you don't go through the 4 tests necessarily. There's other criteria that you determine. But if you don't look at the other bylaws for setbacks and stuff like that as part of your consideration, then you could end up making a lot that basically becomes useless. So they kind of go hand in hand to some degree. And I guess that's where I was going with it. To be quite frank, I looked at this and my first impression was, you gotta be kidding me. But then when you actually look at the numbers and you see the math, but for the area, the setbacks would still permit a fairly fair-sized dwelling on that property and still comply with the zoning setbacks where they were, but for the area that was specified. So I guess that's where I was going with it. I realize this lot, like I said, because it's that remnant piece with the house, obviously that one wouldn't comply without the variance for sure, but you already have an existing dwelling. So it's already non-compliant, legal non-conforming based just on that. Because even the current exterior side yard setback, I think is, if I'm not mistaken, 3 meters. And based on the sketch that was provided, they're at 0.5 meters already. So even the existing bylaw wouldn't comply with regards to that. And I guess that's the only reason I bring it up. Usually you see it as a bunch together. I don't know if in this particular case, the applicant wanted to give it a shot to see if they could sever it first before they spend the money on the variances. But Eric?
Yes.
I was going to say, is it typical in those sort of situations then that the committee would then put a condition that it must get a minor variance by the committee?
Yeah, absolutely, always, because right now what happens, and that's why we put the conditions. If those variances aren't granted, you don't want to have a remnant lot that's useless, that can't be used. So that's really the reason why you normally lump them all together, because we have had instances like that. And I know we've had, there's a property out on Highway 3 that they came with some what seemed to be minor variances, but literally there was every which way of Sunday basically made that piece of land sterile. I don't know why it was severed in the first place, or if it was a remnant parcel from years gone by or whatever, but literally it had like about 5 or 6 major variances that you need on that land to make it to get a building envelope on it. And if it had come together as a severance with variances to begin with, we probably wouldn't have granted any of it. But like I say, it's kind of odd that you wouldn't bring them all together at the same time, because one does reflect on the other typically.
If I may just jump in here, I just did a quick browse of Welland zoning bylaw, for example. They have for a single detached dwelling in their what would be our R1 zone is 400 square meters for a lot area, and then their R2 zone, which would be a little bit higher, is the 270 meters squared. So theirs is lower, which in my opinion is more in line with the provincial policy for intensification.
I have to tell you, Dan, when you brought up Franklin Avenue, I was going to throw in a comment, and I can't wait till you get to Isabel Street as to what the lot coverage was to the building. I thought for sure you were going for it then on number 2 if you couldn't find the way on number 1 on Franklin.
Yeah, and I guess for different reasons for both.
Yeah.
You know, the I guess to the applicant's case on Isabel, you know, but for the fact that it's a semi, they could have built that same house without coming for a variance. It's just, but for the fact that it's a semi, then it's a little bit different requirements. But sorry, as far as the size of the house, setbacks and everything else, it's still applicable. So.
Yep.
All right. Does anyone else have any other business? Not seeing any. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the minutes of the January 12th, 2021 meeting? Angie, Gary, questions or comments? All in favor? That'll be carried. Just one point, maybe I could have brought up on their other business, but just remember going forward, I believe the remainder of our meetings the rest of the year are on Wednesdays, starting next month. So it's going to take probably a couple meetings to get that in our head. So if you log in on Tuesday like me, we'll see you on Tuesday, but then we'll see you the following night on Wednesday. All right. So with that, motion to adjourn. Gary, Angie, all in favor? That'd be carried. We'll see you all next month if we have applications. Have a good evening.
Night, everyone.
Night, everyone.
Night.